Thank you, Cindy. The Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblywoman Black. Assemblywoman Brown May.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Ellison.
Present.
Assemblywoman Martinez.
Present.
Assemblyman Matthews.
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur.
Here.
Assemblywoman Thomas.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Flores.
Present. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please mark Assemblywoman Black as absent excused. We have a quorum. Members, we're going to take the agenda slightly out of order today. We'll be hearing Assembly Bill 86, followed by Assembly Bill 52, and then we'll take public comment. I want to remind you to please keep your microphones on mute unless you are speaking. Please keep your cameras on. Members, for those of you who are going to be speaking, please state your name for the record after each question to make the life easier for our staff. I want to remind folks to remain respectful. I don't anticipate today being too long, but we'll see how the questions go. And then lastly, I want to remind those of you who are participating virtually and watching us that you know that we have a very unique setup. If we're looking down, up, left, right, it doesn't mean we're ignoring the footage. It's just our unique setup calls for us to kind of look in different directions at times. With that, I'd like to open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 86. And my understanding is we have Assemblywoman Peters, who's going to be co-presenting. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Chair Flores. And committee members, for the record, I'm Sarah Peters, representing Assembly District 24 in Washoe County. It's my pleasure today to present Assembly Bill 86, which makes various changes related to the recovery of certain expenses and costs incurred in extinguishing wildfires. With me today to present the bill is Terry Taylor, a fire arson investigator and a certified wildland fire investigator. Assembly Bill 86 was proposed by the committee to conduct an interim study concerning wildfire. It was my pleasure to serve as a member of this important committee during the 2019-2020 interim. The committee was created by Assembly Concurrent Resolution 4 during the 2019 legislative session. It was tasked with considering methods of reducing wildfire fuels, issues related to early responses to wildfire, and economic impacts of wildfires on state and local communities. The committee consisted of 3 members of the Senate, 3 members of the Assembly, and 2 non-voting members. At the committee's final meeting, the work session on July 2nd, 2020, the committee recommended to address numerous wildfire-related issues. One of those recommendations is AB 86, which will help us to recover costs from fighting fires caused by persons who acted in a criminal and negligent manner. With the chair's indulgence, I will provide you with some brief background information. Is that all right, Chair?
Please.
All right. Sarah Peters, for the record. The committee received written recommendations by the Nevada Chapter of the International Association of Arson Investigators that addressed issues related to the recovery of certain costs related to wildfires by state and local government. As you might be aware, we are experiencing increased numbers of human-caused wildfires in Nevada. Additionally, I think we have all heard of wildfires that have been started by people in a negligent manner near our communities. Might they be from target shooting at Tannerite in dry vegetation, or from dragging chains of a trailer? Often it is local governments that are the first to respond to wildfires, and they often bear the brunt of the cost associated with firefighting. Thankfully, they can receive assistance through the Wildland Fire Protection Program, which is housed in the Division of Forestry of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. After a devastating wildfire, it is important that the funds of the Wildland Fire Protection Program are not depleted and that local governments tasked with putting out the wildfires can recover their costs. However, it was brought to our attention that arson investigators have found it extremely difficult for local governments to recover these costs from fire suppression efforts in both criminal and civil investigations. The same investigators have found that adjacent states are much more efficient in cost recovery due to appropriate statutes. Our neighboring states, California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, all have these statutes. With the chair's permission, I would like to now have Mr. Taylor provide a more detailed background on the bill along with a section-by-section overview.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Peters, Chair Flores, and Vice Chair Torres. My name is Terry Taylor. I'm a fire investigator, and I was part of the group that put the suggestion forward to the Wildland Fire Committee. And I thank you for this opportunity to discuss really what is sort of a cleanup bill to do a better job in the economic side of wildland fire. This bill is designed to remove a series of impediments in statutes as perceived by various DAs and city attorneys' offices for local government jurisdictions in northern and eastern Nevada. And basically, these offices need the ability to effectively litigate for cost recovery of expenses in fighting and remediating the effects of wildfires. And my colleagues who are charged with investigating these fires need to be able to move forward so that we can, in fact, cost recover both for the Wildland Fire Protection Program to the Nevada Division of Forestry and to uncompensated costs that occur in local government. There's two primary statutes for cost recovery currently located in the Nevada Revised Statutes. That's 472.540 and 474.550. And as a fire captain and an investigator, I've used these existing statutes to attempt to recover costs with the guidance of local government attorneys. And as court certified and qualified wildfire investigator, and I'm also a certified instructor and have taught over 300 students the basic course in wildland fire investigation, origin and cause investigation. This course covers civil recovery, and all of the investigators in Nevada that have taken the course are familiar with the difference between civil recovery as well as arson. And our arson statutes allow us to recover costs of investigation and supplemental costs for the crime of arson, usually ordered by a district court judge as an additional penalty, I guess you could say, for a convicted arsonist. So our students are trained in both cost recovery and civil investigation procedures. Our federal partners with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, and the National Park Service, who we've trained their personnel as well here in Nevada. They have been doing cost recovery for really the last 50 years. And they've been doing it very successfully. The Bureau of Land Management gave me some statistics for last year, which showed that they recovered through the use of their federal statute almost $1 million in cost recovery for negligent fires, excluding arson. In my case, I worked for East Fork Fire Protection District for 21 years. Among my duties I was their fire investigator in Douglas County. And I've submitted through mutual aid cost recovery cases to a variety of jurisdictions, obviously including Douglas County, but Washoe County, Carson City, Story, Lyon, Churchill, Humboldt, and Elko as part of an investigative team. And so also Reno, Sparks, and Elko as cities. And I've faced a variety of denials of attempts to file cost recovery cases, as have my colleagues in local government and state government. Unlike what's going on in the federal side, where these are welcomed by either an assistant U.S. attorney or a solicitor general, and then moved into the federal system. So I'd like to talk about the bill and section by section and just kind of cover a few of the points quickly that we think this bill is actually going to solve. And I really appreciate the committee to conduct an interim study concerning wildfires moving forward with this concept. Section 1 of the bill adds NRS 318 districts formed to provide fire protection. One of these is my sister district right next door to me, the Tahoe Douglas Fire Protection District up at Lake Tahoe. When I filed cases on their behalf, I was advised by our district attorney, who, by the way, our Douglas district attorney supports this bill, that they did not, because of the nature of the formation, they did not have the authority to seek cost recovery for wildfires. And so section 1 creates that authority. And there is also in both the 472 and 474 statute language that talks about the fire must threaten human life. And so we've had a number of cases that have been brought forward where basically a negligently started fire burns into a neighbor or a few neighbors' places in the wildland, doesn't destroy any houses. We've done cost recovery, we've established the negligence, but when you go to interview the next door neighbors about did they feel threatened in human life, many of them don't really want to participate. Yes, and I understand that. It's like, hey, I got to live with these people. So in our case, there is also another thing. Those of us that are in the fire service and in law enforcement, many courts of competent jurisdiction around the West have held that fire and law enforcement, we don't count for threatening human life. Arguably, we're all human, but because of the nature of our jobs, we have pretty much agreed to absorb these risks as part of our job. And so the DAs and city attorneys that I've dealt with have all pretty much talked to neighbors and I would call them victims of the negligent person. And we've had a very poor turnout, I guess you could say. And what's disturbing to me as an investigator and also as a taxpayer, that it really shouldn't be up to a next door neighbor. It should be up to a district attorney or a city attorney or an attorney general to decide whether the negligence meets the requirements of statute and was this person or corporation or whatever negligent to move forward with a case, because there's taxpayer monies involved here. It isn't the next door neighbor that's bearing the brunt. It's all of us in Nevada that are. So the section 1 takes care of that part of it, and I appreciate the changes. I see that Assemblyman Ellison has a question.
We'll continue with the presentation, and then at the conclusion, we'll go into the questions.
Okay, very good, sir.
Thank you.
So the requirement in 472-540-1 and 2 requires that the state forester fire warden determine that the fire or other emergency which threatens human life, that the fire is willful or negligently ignited or an unavoidable accident. And the state forester no longer employs qualified wildfire investigators to perform this task. This task has been given by interlocal agreement to the Department of Public Safety, Nevada State Fire Marshal Division. And 477, which is their statute of powers and duties of the fire marshal, specifically exclude their jurisdiction in Clark, Washoe, and Carson City counties or consolidated municipality unless they are requested by the fire chief of the county or the municipality. And I can tell you, as a former employee and investigator at the State Fire Marshal's Office, Clark and Washoe rarely invited us in unless there was something major. Even in major wildfires, we were not invited in. Those were handled typically by Truckee Meadows Fire, Reno Fire, or Sparks Fire. You still have, under this statute, the issue of threatening human life, and you still have the unavoidable accident analysis, which could prevent cost recovery by the state forester in the 318 fire districts. So Section 2 amends 474550 and eliminates the aforementioned threatens human life condition, which I see as a condition precedent that has to be met to initiating any sort of cost recovery under the two existing statutes. And because the number of 318 fire districts is shrinking, and many of them have already been converted to 474 districts, or have been absorbed or could be absorbed by growing cities, this clears up any discussion of a lack of authority for districts created by the boards of county commissioners, and would allow them to participate. They have investigators, the three that I'm aware of, and could file cases for cost recovery in local courts. Section 3 is all new language. That amends NRS 268, and 268 is sort of powers and duties of county commissions, and specifically empowers a board of county commissioners to bring an action and for cost and to initiate cost recovery. And again, it adds important language, and this is in my discussions with city attorney personnel around the state, as well as district attorneys. What they're clearing up. One of the issues is these cases can be very complex, and the expenses incurred by the county in extinguishing the wildfire, the addition of reasonable attorney's fees and litigation expense is necessary. In some of the cases that I have worked already that have been successful under the previous statutes, what has happened is that no attorney's fees have been awarded to the public sector counsel. And in some instances, they've had to hire outside experts to determine the values of land that was destroyed, this sort of thing. And that was just sort of eaten by the DA's office. And I don't think that's correct. I have a 10-year history of working in the private sector in the insurance industry, where we subrogated against tortfeasors, and attorney's fees were always awarded as part of those negotiations or court decrees. Section 4 is all new language. It amends NRS 268. It specifically empowers a city council or other governing body to bring an action in a court of competent jurisdiction. And it also adds language allowing reasonable attorney's fees and litigation expense. And I ran into this 9 years ago with a major fire. I took a leave of absence from my fire district for a month, and I put together a team of investigators, public and private, who investigated the first Collin Ranch fire 9 years ago. And I was also mutual aided to the one that happened a couple of months ago, because I work now for North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District. In that particular case, we were able to recover significant amounts of money from NV Energy, which I can't describe the amount, but it was very significant. And as we were settling, I raised the issue, what about the costs to the cities and to the counties, because we had mutual aid, and there were various costs. A fire management assistance grant was sought and gained by the city of Reno, but the wildfire protection program did not exist 9 years ago. And so we went to the city of Reno and to the other entities in Washoe County as private sector. We said, look, we've done all the heavy lifting. We've paid experts. We're going to get some of that money back. You could join us and you could recover costs. And basically what I was told is, well, we don't have the authority to do that. And again, it doesn't take any money away from the people who were victims who lost their homes. it's in addition to that, is what the courts have done in the cases that I've been involved with. So that would allow a city council or other governing body in a municipality to move forward. Section 5 actually amends NRS 318 again, and it empowers the board of a fire district that's created wholly or in part under the general improvement district statute, the authority to bring an action in a court and recover expenses and attorney fees. So we could say, all right, so those things are in your bill and in place, and if passed without any language changes, it would empower these entities to go through a process to decide, is there a viable defendant? Is that defendant negligent or willful in their activity? And is there a reasonable certainty that we could prevail in a civil case of 51% of the evidence? And can we move forward to recover costs? And so one of my concerns is the Wildfire Protection Program has just been absolutely a godsend to local government. It's 6 years old. It's subscriber based. I look at it, in my view, as sort of a self-insurance pool, and it's based on past fire history. And I think most of us can agree that that we have a challenge there, because fires tend to be somewhat randomly located and randomly occurring. We have a fire season. We know more fires occur, between the months of May and October as a general rule, but we do not have, even though there's people tinkering with it at the National Fire Academy and at the National Wildfire Coordinating Group, we don't really have a way to predict the number of fires other than weather-based fires. So these negligent or willful civil fires are randomly generated. So it's sort of like gambling. So my concern is, as not just as a taxpayer, but as a fire service professional, is this fund has been very effective, but it can be depleted. And so I believe, in my reading of the statute of the creation of the fund, that if the fund runs out of money, that the state general fund has to sort of feed it. And thus, any outstanding claims by local government or state government, you would have to supplement the lack of money that would be in there for a large scale, particularly a large scale fire. And so one of the researches I tried to do was kind of see how this fund is working. And I went to my old fire chief because we had a major fire in Douglas County this last year. And so he gave me some information, which I think was very relevant. When the program started, years 1 through 4, East Fork Fire Protection District paid $90,000 a year. Based on our fire history in years 5 and 6 being the current year, these fees have been raised because our past fire history has actuarially not been good for the fund. So we're now paying $164,000 a year. And so over the total 6-year period, East Fork has paid $588,000. In June of 1920, we had a fire ignited on the west side of US Highway 395, south of Gardnerville. Multiple federal, state, and local jurisdiction fire suppression resources responded. It basically took weeks to put the entire fire out. Evacuations of homes, ranches occurred. Shelters were open to house people, domestic animals, horses, and other livestock. It was a major impact for us in Douglas County as residents, but also for the region, because we drew down your fire response resources, both federal, state, and local, within really about a 200-mile radius, including bringing folks over from California to help us out. So the fire had multiple points of origin. So initially there was concerns of a arson fire. I coordinate for the Sierra Front, assigning multiple agency investigators to large events. Sierra Front Wildfire Cooperators has been around for almost 50 years and was created by Lodi Smith, former Forester Fire Warden for the state of Nevada and the then director of CAL FIRE. And so we assigned local government as well as federal resources to investigate the fires. And that included the state fire marshal, federal fire and law enforcement experts, Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We also had Mono County Sheriff's Office, and we used other resources during that. So the overall cost of this fire was around $6.5 million. You had land burning that was, some of it was private, some of it was tribal, some of it was Bureau of Indian Affairs and Bureau of Land Management. When that happens, since the fire started, even though it started on adjacent to a state highway, it became the responsibility of the East Fork Fire Protection District. And so you basically had a cost share agreement that was created later on in the game. During the course of the fire, numerous residences, vehicles, outbuildings were threatened. Some were destroyed. We had basically mandatory evacuations. And in the first 3 days, because wind was pushing the fire towards Gardnerville and Minden, there was lots of aviation resources used, both state resources, a Division of Forestry, as well as contract resources from the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. So the first few days were uber expensive for the fire service, but we were able to pretty much halt forward movement and not stop lateral movement is probably the best way to describe it. A fire management assistance grant, or what we call an FMAG, was requested through the Nevada Division of Forestry. It was approved, and that would cover 75% of state and local costs to respond and suppress the fire. However, nothing is free and nothing is complete in any of these sources of funding, whether it's the Wildland Fire Protection Program or the Fire Management Assistance Grants. What basically happens is the FMAG covered only from fire ignition, which we all knew when that was, and to the period of termination of evacuations. Yet the actual fire suppression activity lasted for another 2.5 weeks.
Sorry.
So,
Assemblywoman Peters, we do have a little bit of a time crunch
okay.
with the other four things. So that the committee has a strong understanding of the bill, and we could move on to questions if that's all right with the chair.
Sounds good, Assemblywoman. And thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you going through it so thoroughly. Members, for the most part, are comfortable with most of it, but there's just some clarifying questions that we had. So we'll start off with Assemblyman Ellison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand about this bill. The thing that I do not see in here is that no fault. You look at Cadillac converters, they can cause fire. They can run. And if you've got a camper and you go down through a ditch and change drag, get an arc, that's still a no fault. It's still on public lands and BLM or Forest Service Road. So I've got a problem with that. And then what about the fires like NV Energy? A lot of that was in areas that when the pods did catch fire and go down, but a lot of them areas can't be pruned or they cannot have chemicals down around the poles. So that causes a fire, and so they're on the hook. But my last question is, what about the fire department, Forest Service or BLM employees, their staff, and look at all the fires along the highway. You look at NDOT, you look at the fire screen, and we watched the other day, how many fires are along I-80 by cigarettes. So at which point in time, who's at fault? I think that the cases that need to be, but I mean, this is pretty broad. I mean, somebody can make a bad mistake by driving to a trench and end up, or a ditch could be ended up owning $1 million in debt. So could you explain some of that? Start with the Cadillac converter. Thank you.
So we have successfully sued product manufacturers for defective products in
Mr. Taylor, if I could just have you
cost-recovery
state your name for the
cases.
record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. For the record, Terry Taylor. As part of the insurance industry, we have successfully sued product manufacturers for defective products and able to get cost recovery. So like you say, I'm driving a vehicle, and that's what started the fire down in Douglas County in June. The catalytic converter failed, and we had this large event, an expensive event, which, by the way, we were not able to locate the truck that did it after very thorough investigation. The other thing is that all of these statutes have, there is language in there that discusses an accident. And so things like this that are an accident, you're basically off the hook. And the other thing that I've learned in my years of following up the civil litigation is you can't squeeze blood out of a stone. So our federal partners are able to attach tax returns and do things. And that's not, not in this bill, thank God, not interested in dealing with that. Motor vehicle insurance, liability insurance, will pay out if you accidentally or negligently cause a fire with your vehicle. And we've recovered monies that way to the maximum amount of the motor vehicle policy. So it doesn't on a state or local level, I don't see it as becoming an onerous debt that would follow somebody around for the rest of their life. The decision-making that I've seen with local government officials in the past is we collect what we can collect, we parse it back out to our partners that are owed money, and we have some legal fees for our costs, and we move on. And one of my primary concerns is being able to recover money back for the wildfire protection program. And Assemblyman Ellison, I hope that answered your question.
One follow-up, sir, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please follow up, Assemblyman.
Okay, is the BLM Forest Service and NDOT, are they held any kind of responsibility if there's a fire occurred by an employee?
By an employee, yes. But so NDOT, I am not aware of any time when NDOT has been sued for causing a wildfire. We do have issues with both Forest Service operations. We have had litigation and BLM operations. And what happens if they start it, they pay for everything. So that hasn't been a problem. The wildfire protection program in most cases doesn't even get tapped because the BLM calls their cooperators, Sierra Front, and says, hey, I need help. And at that point, they're paying the bills.
Okay, thank you very much.
Members, do we have any additional questions? If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and state your name. I don't believe we have any questions at this time. I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 86 on the queue to please call in. I want to remind you, you could please limit your remarks to 2 minutes. Broadcast, we're ready.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 86, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 323. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 323. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, my name is Steve Walker, Stebwalker. I'm representing Lyon County in support of AB 86. Thank you.
And thank you. If we could please go to the next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 522. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Atlas, JENNIFERATLAS, with the Griffin Company, today representing the City of Reno, and we are in support of AB 86. We've seen how destructive the wildfires can be and the high level of cost it takes to fight them. The bill provides an additional tool to the city, both as a deterrent for these situations, as well as a tool in the most egregious situations when a party is found to be at fault. We thank you very much for your time and encourage your support.
And thank you. If we could please go to the next caller. Wishing to testify in support.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Perfect, thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 86.
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 86, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 323. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
And now at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 86.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 86, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to go back to Assemblywoman Peters. If there's any closing remarks you wish to have.
I just want to thank you, Chair and committee members. This is Sarah Peters for the record, for your time and consideration of this legislation. We are available if anyone has follow-up questions. Otherwise, I urge you to support this important piece of legislation.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We appreciate you helping us walk through that bill this morning. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 86. And at this time, I'd like to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 52.
Good morning, Chairman Flores and committee members. I'm Charlie Donahue, and I serve as the administrator of the Division of State Lands. With me here today is Scott Carey, the agency's state land use planner. It is a pleasure to be here to present AB 52. This is an agency-requested bill that proposes a few changes to statute regarding the State Land Use Planning Advisory Council, commonly known as SLUPAC. These changes have been reviewed by the council and are supported by the council. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I would like to briefly review the proposed changes outlined in the various sections of the bill.
Please.
Thank you. Section 1, paragraph 1, proposes to broaden the existing membership of the council from its current configuration of 17 voting members, 1 from each county, and 1 non-voting member from the Nevada Association of Counties, NACO, to also include 2 additional non-voting members, 1 representative appointed by the Nevada League of Cities and 1 representative appointed by the Nevada Indian Commission. The intent of this change is to include representation from cities and tribal nations that are also responsible for land use planning within their jurisdiction. As background, in 2013, this body passed legislation adding NACO to SLUPAC as a non-voting member. The council believes it would be beneficial to also add representation from cities and tribal nations consistent with legislation passed in 2013, adding NACO. We reached out both to the Nevada Indian Commission and the League of Cities to discuss the addition and both welcome being added to SLUPAC. Since the bill was released, the agency has heard some concern regarding the status of the proposed Nevada Indian Commission representative as non-voting. I'd be happy to discuss this matter further today with you. Section 1, paragraph 5, provides how to handle an appointment of to SLUPAC and if an elected member's term in office expires prior to his or her service on the council. This is being proposed to enable local governments the ability to have representative on the council that they feel will represent their community best. Section 1, paragraph 7, is the necessary language specifying that the added members serve at the pleasure of their appointing authority, the same as the existing non-voting member. Section 1, paragraph 8, provides that the council shall elect a vice chair in addition to a chair. Section 2, paragraph 4, recognizes that the council may directly comment on land use planning and policies that may affect their local communities. Examples of this could include commenting on regional resource management plans generated by the federal government, commenting on land withdrawal proposals such as the expansion of Air Station Fallon or the proposed Nellis expansion, as well as other projects that occur on federal or state land as they are routed through the state clearinghouse. Section 2, paragraph 5 and 6 make explicit the duties of SLUPAC include assisting and advising the administrator and the agency with resolving inconsistencies in land use plans, as well as planning for areas of critical environmental concern, and forwarding that input or recommendation to SLUPAC's Executive Council as needed. These revisions to statute ensure that the duties of SLUPAC members are comprehensive in nature and afford an additional layer of technical expertise. Lastly, Section 3, paragraph 3, reduces the number of days required to advertise for a hearing associated with the potential designation of an ACEC from 20 to 10 days to align this period with similar notices for substantive planning changes such as zoning map changes, master plan amendments, or special use permits. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions or committee members.
Thank you for your presentation. At this time, we'll start off with Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate it, and thank you for running through this bill so quickly. I appreciate that as well. And I'm just wondering, taking a look at the Land Use Planning Advisory Council, whether or not it makes sense for us to continue to have representation of 1 person per county when we know that some regions in Nevada are so much more populated than others, and them not having that representation. So I'm just wondering if this really makes the most sense for Nevada, and what the opinion of this land use planning is here in the state.
Thank you for the question, Madam Vice Chair. Charlie Donahue for the record. The council was established in the early 70s, and as you noted, the population in the state has increased dramatically since that time. I think one of the unique things about the council is the fact that it does have representatives from each county, and That's a combination of your populated areas such as Reno and Las Vegas and Clark County, as well as the rural communities. And I think I may need to ask you to further explain the last portion of your question so I can adequately address it, ma'am.
If I may, Chair.
Please.
Thank you. Just with the largest populations being really in Clark County and Washoe County, I'm just wondering if the current way that this council makes sense, considering so much more of the population is in those areas.
Well, thank you for the question, Madam Vice Chair. Charlie Donahue for the record. I think the work that the council does, and it was created, like I said, in the early 70s to address public land use policies, and I think those are relevant throughout the state, regardless of population. I believe you're from down south, and you're probably familiar with the disposal of federal lands within your communities, and those are established through federal legislation. But one of the critical elements of that is the Bureau of Land Management establishing resource management plans that designates what lands are set for disposal. And those are relevant whether you're in a populated area like Clark County and Washoe County, or whether you're in rural areas, Pershing County, or even in Esmeralda County.
And thank you, Vice Chair. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Donahue and Mr. Carey, for meeting with me last week about the concern that I had when it came to Section 1, letter D in particular. I think it's very important for this representation to be present. I'm just curious as to if you would be open to making it a voting member instead, because based upon some experiences that I've had, a non-voting member could not second an amendment or second a motion, and also is not able to bring forward items for discussion if we were really to keep it strictly the usual policies. So I'm wondering if the possibility of having the appointee of the Nevada Indian Commission can become a voting member. And then I do have a second question that is not in this same section, if there's a possibility to discuss that.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Anderson. Charlie Donahue for the record. You're welcome. Thank you for the promotion. I'm the administrator for the Division of State Lands, not the director. But I appreciate you reaching out to us. I think we had a very positive and productive conversation. One of the things that I did share with you is that we are fortunate enough to have a SLUPAC meeting scheduled for next Monday. Scott and I have already reached out to the chair and requested that this item be revisited at that meeting. And it may make more practical sense instead of having just the Nevada Indian Commission representative, but what I think we'd like to do is circle back with the league and as well as with NACO. One of the things that we did discuss is that if it were to be a voting member, we would want to ensure a similar level of status and actually have them go through the appointment process by the governor as well. And I think you raised that issue in terms of tweaking some language in the bill. So I really would appreciate an opportunity to circle back with the council and give them an opportunity to weigh in. And I'd be more than happy to bring that back to this committee after that meeting next week.
Mr. Chair, if I may follow up.
Please follow up.
Thank you so much for that. And I, again, really appreciate being open to it. And if you'd like me to be part of a discussion, please feel free to let me know, because I do appreciate what you're saying. And there's also a possibility then with those other non-voting areas to be able to also address the concern that Assemblymember Torres has brought up about the different counties and everything. But I do have a second question that's on a different area that I don't believe I spoke with you about last week, just because of how our conversation went and with the time frame that it was. It's actually from Section 2, Area 4. With this advising that's happening, is this already happening, first of all? And also, what expertise does the committee have on critical environmental concerns? So that way we can really be aware of that information.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Anderson. Charlie Donahue, for the record. I would say to some degree we are formalizing what is taking place currently. The council actually did weigh in on at least the Fallon land withdrawal issue. If not Nellis, I'm a little challenged in my memory if they weighed in on that one as well. But in terms of memberships of the council, I really appreciate you asking that question. Our chair is currently the natural resource manager for Eureka County. Members of the council, the county manager from Churchill County, Mr. Barbie, used to be the director of the Department of Agriculture. We have a combination of staff members, community development directors who are very familiar with planning issues, as well as some elected members. So I think there's a good balance in terms of the composition of the council. And I would say that most of the folks in the rurals are extremely familiar with their communities, and they've engaged and are very aware of what the natural resource elements are. So I feel very comfortable in the makeup of the council in terms of their expertise, in terms of review or weighing in on ACEC's matter.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Chair, for giving me this allowance with so many questions, because I also think that's an item that when the governor is appointing, that's something that they can consider. So again, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. This is really not much of a policy question, but in Section 3, Sub 3, I was just wondering, you notice in newspapers, but do you put the notices anywhere else? Because I'm just wondering, because fewer and fewer people seem to read the newspaper. So that 10 days in the paper, does it go anywhere else?
Thank you very much for the question, Charlie Donahue, for the record. We typically notice our meetings at the state library, as well as here in the agency, as well as on our website. There was a rather robust conversation regarding this. We actually have to publish in legal notices for another element of one of our programs. And we brought forward as staff to actually strike this because we recognize that paper print is not as, one, readily available as it used to be, and that there are other ways to get the word out in terms of public notices. But some of our rural members on the council really wanted to keep this in place, that in some of their more remote locations, in particular Humboldt County, that's their lifeblood, the local once a week newspaper where they're going to find this. And I really feel that it's important, particularly in terms of noticing for an ACEC, that we cover all the bases in terms of a thorough noticing process, ma'am.
I agree, and that's why I asked the question, covering all the bases. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. You're welcome. Charlie Donahue for the record.
Next, we have Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just have a question, noticing that there are openings on the advisory council. I wanted to check how many openings you have. I think there may be 4, and if so, how long do you expect those to be open before they are appointed?
Ma'am, I'm going to, Charlie Donahue for the record, I'm going to kick this to Scott Carey, who's a little bit more familiar with what membership is currently.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Scott Carey, State Lands Planner. To answer the Assemblywoman's question, we currently have one vacancy on the Executive Council. They were appointed over the summer. We had 4 originally last year that vacancies, but the council took action last summer to appoint 4. We were just notified that there's 1 vacancy, and we hope to fill that at our next SLUPAC meeting next week. And the terms on the existing council will run through May of 2022.
Thank you. I was looking on the website and it was dated February 2020. So I appreciate you clearing that up. Thank you.
And thank you for that question, Assemblywoman. Members, do we have any additional questions? Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Seeing none, at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak.
And I'm not sure if that's the chair's internet or my own. I think Chair Flores may be disconnected. Can we just do a 1-minute recess?
I was momentarily kicked off. Am I back?
Yes, Chair, you're back.
I appreciate it. I don't know if I was kicked off before I could make the announcement that at this time I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 52.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 52, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 247, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, I'm Will Adler, Willadler, with Southern State Government Relations, representing Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. I hope everyone can hear me. All right. Am I on?
You are. Good morning.
Excellent. Thank you. Very nice deadline. Thank you, Chairman Flores. Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe has written in a letter from the Chairwoman Janet Davis, and I hope everyone had a chance to read that. But Chairwoman Davis has stated that is essentially a long time that the state's Native American tribes have representation on the State Land Use and Planning Advisory Council, and that she was pleased that somebody is being added to this council because that is a step in the right direction. It is vital to the voices and the knowledge of the Nevada's Native American tribes to be heard in this board's work, inclusion of such members who better allow the local governments to collaborate with Native American tribes on federal, state, and local government land use and planning issues. And I think that is truly the key point of this is, Native American tribes are amongst our local governments, and between them in some cases throughout Nevada, and that their inclusion on this board would be in the benefit of all Nevadans. And then additionally, we are in support of this measure because it is great to get some voice on this board. The chairwoman has conveyed to me that it is crucial that not only should we have a voice, but as Assemblywoman Anderson has indicated, it'd be great to have a voting member on the board as well, not just a vocal member, but a member that could actually vote additionally. So thank you, Assemblywoman Anderson, for bringing up that point. And Chairwoman Davis would also like to state that they are in support of this, but they would also support a voting member even more. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for calling in. If we could go to the next individual wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 52.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 52, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 010, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thanks. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Jake Tibbetts. That's JakeTibbitts, and I'm the Natural Resources Manager for Eureka County. And as Mr. Donahue mentioned earlier, I'm also the current chairman of SLUPAC. And so I just want to acknowledge that I'm speaking on behalf of Eureka County, not SLUPAC as a body. Eureka County does support this bill and would like to see it move forward. And I will attest that Mr. Donahue is correct that SLUPAC has pushed this forward as a body. As chairman of the council, I am happy to bring up the issues identified today, next week at our meeting. And from Eureka County's perspective, we would fully support empowering that new seat representing the tribal interests to have a voting role on the council. So Eureka County would support amending that language into the bill. I'd also like to just quickly address the issues related to the representation on the council. I think it's important for the committee to understand that the legislature has already provided land use planning authority at the local level. And one of the greatest things about this council is on every agenda we have a round table, basic discussion, talking about various issues, and the rural communities learn so much from our urban partners on the council, as well as I think the urban representation, where most of our citizens in the state live, learn much from what's going on in the rurals. And so it allows us to take that information back to our local planning authorities, whether they're county commissions, planning commissions, city councils, whoever it is, to implement the best management practices, the best land use policies, and to move forward. So having that role for every county on the council is crucial to retain because it helps us as a whole in Nevada to move forward in what's best for all the residents of Nevada. Also in NRS Chapter 278, which is the planning statutes, the legislature has granted that authority to local counties to represent themselves in interests related to public land. So again, having that seat of every county on the council allows us all to learn together and move forward. The council typically, we're an advisory council. I think that's important too, that we provide advice back to agencies, including state and federal agencies. And our goal is to work together in the betterment of Nevada as a whole and to work by consensus whenever possible. So very seldom, if ever, that I can remember, we've ever had split votes or decisions moving forward. We try to have a common voice moving forward on a lot of these issues and hope to retain the same. And with that, again, looking forward to pursuing this and pushing it forward and looking at amendments that can make this work for everybody. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for calling in. If we can please go to the next caller wishing to call in support of Assembly Bill 52.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 728. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, this is Marla McDade Williams, Marla MC, capital DADEWILLIAMS, with Strategies 360, speaking today on behalf of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. The Reno Sparks Indian Colony supports AB 52, and we want to extend our appreciation to the members of the Land Use Planning Advisory Council, to Mr. Donahue, and in particular to Mr. Carey, for recognizing an opportunity to increase communication between county and tribal issues. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. If we could please go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 52.
Caller with the last three digits of 323. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chairman Forrest and the committee. For the record, my name is Steve Walker, STEBEWALKER. I'm representing Lyon, Carson, and Douglas counties, and we're all in support of adding the NACO and League of Cities and Tribes to the Land Use Advisory Council. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could please go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 52.
Caller with the last three digits of 665. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. It's Stacy Montus, Executive Director of the Nevada Indian Commission. That's STACEYMONTOOTH. On behalf of the Nevada Indian Commission, I would like to express our support for AB 52. The Nevada Indian Commission is focused on developing and improving collaboration, cooperation, and communication between our 27 tribal nations, bands, and colonies, state, local government, and related agencies with the purpose of improving the quality of life for the first stewards of this land, my Native American relatives. That is tackled through education, employment, health, well-being, and socioeconomic programs for Nevada's American Indian citizens while enhancing tribal sovereignty, economic development, and community development. Section 1, subsection D of this bill would add a member of the State Land Use Plan Advisory Council that is appointed by my agency, the Nevada Indian Commission. The Commission is in full support of this additional member and believes that this member of the council will help provide a Native American perspective on all statewide land use planning initiatives. Again, our 27 federally recognized tribal nations within Nevada make up our Indian reservations, bands, colonies. They all have their own land use plan and natural resource needs. Throughout Nevada, there are over 5 million acres of land that tribal nations own and develop and manage land use planning activities. Each tribal nation in Nevada is unique. We have our own traditions that have spanned generations. The Commission feels that it's important that these perspectives are included on the State Land Use Planning Advisory Council. As Nevada continues to grow and plan for its future, it's important that tribal nations can better collaborate with state and local governments across the state on land and planning use issues. The Nevada Indian Commission believes that the State Land Use Plan Advisory Council can provide a forum for tribal nations to better collaborate and contribute to land use planning issues in our entire state, and we support AB 52. In conclusion, on behalf of the Nevada Indian Commission, I want to extend my appreciation first to Chair Flores, of course to Mr. Donahue and Mr. Carey, and to Director Brad Crowell. The Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources has kept our agency informed of the creation and the development of this BDR. Further, I'm extremely grateful that Mr. Donahue and Mr. Carey have listened to the constituents wanting to consider making this appointment by the NIC as a voting member. We appreciate that flexibility and look forward to the feedback from next week's SUPAC meeting. Thank you very much, and I stand for questions.
Thank you for your testimony. At this time, I'd like to go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 52.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 52.
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 52, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 52.
To testify as neutral on Assembly Bill 52, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers as neutral at this time.
Thank you. If we could please have our sponsors come back and any closing remarks you may have.
Chair Flores, Charlie Donahue for the record. I'd like to just thank you and the committee members for engaging in the conversation and the support that members of the community have afforded AB 52. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I would like to just let the record reflect that we did get an email from Mr. Wesley Harper, Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities, last name Harper, stating his support for Assembly Bill 52. Thank you again for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 52, and I'd like to invite those wishing to in public comment. I want to remind you to please be respectful and that you limit your remarks to 2 minutes. Broadcast, please.
To take your place in the public comment queue, please press *9 now. Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close out public comment. Members, tomorrow we'll be meeting at 9 a.m. We have 2 presentations from Clark County and the City of Reno. Please be prepared with questions. I anticipate us having a good conversation with them. Thank you, members. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mr.